I have a specific set of circumstances that I've addressed to you in a letter and want to follow up in this setting today. And I have no doubt but what you and other officials at the VA are sympathetic and concerned and want to resolve the circumstances we find ourselves in with a particular employee at a particular VA hospital in our state. We have the circumstance, just to set the background for my questions. We face one of the worst examples, in my view, of lack of accountability at the VA with the case of a physician assistant who abused Kansas veterans at the Leavenworth VA hospital and potentially other veterans at other facilities within our state. He has been criminally charged with multiple accounts of sexual assault and abuse on numerous veterans who sought his care and his counsel. He had a criminal record admitted on his application for state licensure when he was hired. The VA hired him anyway, clearly he should never have been hired and should have never been retained as an employee of the VA. He is a physician assistant. An explanation that I received is that physician assistants are not considered significant risks, or there are lower risks than other healthcare professionals at the VA, and so the vetting that should take place didn't. And what he did in his capacity as a physician assistant is to target veterans who were suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome. And he used his position at the VA to add to the wounds of war of those who served our country instead of healing them. There are a number of witnesses, many of them wish to remain anonymous. Criminal, as I said, proceedings have been filed. And just to give you a flavor, there are two Army veteran brothers who were patients of this individual who felt they had no choice but to go back to this physician assistant for their care and treatment. And the quote was, "The fear of losing what I earned versus the fear of being sexually assaulted again, I don't know which one was more important." What an amazing statement for a veteran to reach a conclusion. I don't know whether to go back because I might not get the care I need if I don't. A victim who asked to remain anonymous in an interview in July of 14, when these charges were filed, said this: "It certainly violates veterans' trust. We're dealing with a number of issues, and we have to come back to the agency tasked with caring for our nation's veterans is now adding further wounds to the nation's veterans." Mr. Secretary, I want to focus in on two aspects of this. And again, I know that your staff has reached out to mine, I assume in response to a letter that I wrote you a few weeks ago. But this goes to accountability, something that you and I have had a conversation about for a very long time. I want to go to, how does somebody get hired with this background? And perhaps even more importantly, it's troublesome to me that this individual was never fired. After the Inspector General's report, he voluntarily left the VA. And one of the conversations that we've had for a long time is about the ability to fire people at the VA. And of all the circumstances I can think of, I can't figure out why this wouldn't be one in which a person was fired as compared to voluntarily retiring, which I assume, among other things, has a different connotation, a different aura to being fired versus retiring. But I assume it also has different consequences in regard to benefits and this individual's future. So if we could, you had VA officials, leadership here in front of our committee last week. I got what you would expect for me to hear from them, and I'm not discounting what they said, but they want a zero tolerance. The VA is committed to a zero tolerance of assault, sexual assault on veterans or staff, others at the VA. And so I know that's the case. We want a zero tolerance, but we have specific instances here in which the hiring process was faulty and the discharge process really didn't take place. Mr. Secretary.
Senator, first of all, any accusation of sexual assault, sexual molestation is unacceptable. As soon as I heard about this, I went to Leavenworth. I was there. I dug through the data, and I have different data than you have, so we need to get together and compare our data, because what I understand from my visit and the documents I reviewed is when there was an accusation of this individual's potential of having done this, we immediately removed him from caring for patients. We immediately started the procedure to do an investigation and to fire him. He resigned, and we went back and we looked at our hiring process. And what I was told at the time, and again, you've got different data, so I've got to find out why I didn't see the data you may have or where you got your data. There was nothing in his file that suggested that this was a risk, that this had occurred. So obviously you've got different data than I have, and because this is not something we would tolerate, and obviously if this showed up in a person's hiring process, we would not hire them. Maybe David, do you have different data than I have?
No, I think I have the same information you have, Mr. Secretary.
Secretary McDonald and Schucklin, our information comes from the Inspector General, the VA Inspector General, significant number of press accounts, I suppose, as well. Criminal proceedings now pending in the District Court of Leavenworth County, Kansas. But I've seen the application for his licensure in the state of Kansas, and he voluntarily indicated on the form that he has a criminal history, which unfortunately the licensure folks didn't pick up on either, but I assume that was reviewed when this individual, Mr. Wisner, was hired by the VA. In addition to that, are you telling me that when someone resigns, you lose your ability to fire them? So are you telling me that he beat you to the punch?
If somebody resigns, they're no longer an employee. That's true in the private sector or the public sector. Someone resigns, they've resigned. Now, obviously, you have judicial options, which is what's occurring right now with this individual.
Well, I think I have no doubt but what the facts as I described them are accurate, and we would continue to ask you to use this as a learning experience, not only help prosecute so that we can send the message to veterans about how careful we are, but again, it, in my view, goes back to hiring practices and discharge procedure. Again, I would ask you to respond to my letter in writing so that we can see your response, and then we can have a conversation again.
Well, we'll certainly respond to your letter in writing, and obviously, we are a learning organization. We do want to learn from mistakes. We want to learn from what's going right. You had the best practices diffusion hearing this week, so we'll get back to you. But again, I want to be careful not to use media reports as proof of accusation. So let's let the judicial process play out. We will share with you what we know, and we would appreciate seeing the documents that you have.
My information, I met with the Inspector General Missile. We've had conversations extensive about this topic, and I can assure you that what I'm reporting isn't anything but what I was told in that setting.
I've not met with Mike on this, so I will.
And I would ask you if you would ask the VA professionals, the leadership in Kansas, both Leavenworth and the VISN, would you instruct them to have a dialogue with me and fully lay out the scenario as they see it to me?
Absolutely. I mean, that's their responsibility. We ask each one of our medical center directors to work with their members of Congress.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to run vote. This is not I won't leave this as an open-ended question. I'm not trying to get you, but as I thought further about your response to my comments and question, one of the things that I think is true and you could look into is you indicated that Mr. Wisner was as soon as the VA found out about him, He was taken away from patient care. As I understand the facts, he continued to be an employee after that. He was removed from patient care, but he continued to work at the VA. The day that he was removed from patient care is the same day that he admitted the allegations, admitted he had a problem, admitted that he dealt with patients in the way that he did. And my point would be, that's a moment in which somebody could be discharged, fired. And yet the VA just removed him from patient care and kept him on the payroll. And so that, to me, that again highlights this difficulty in getting rid of, in this case, not just bad actors, but terrible actors.
Well, it sounds to me like, Senator Moran, like you have better information than I do, and that you've met with the Inspector General, and he's not yet met with me on this issue. So I need to find out what he discovered in his investigation. Obviously, if you have the case, you fire them. That's why we fired 3,755 people. You don't tolerate that kind of behavior.